An introduction to phonemic awareness. Every person on earth is born with an American spirit, an untamed yearning for a better tomorrow. Dr. Gina Constant. There is a moment that happens to almost every reader, and almost no one talks about it. A child you love finishes a sentence in their favorite book. They read it with feeling, expression, and even pride. You turn the page and point to the next line, a line they have not seen before, and the same child freezes. The voice that just sounded confident now sounds small. They look at the picture, they look at your face, they look anywhere except at the line of letters that does not match anything they have already memorized, or it happens to an adult. You are asked a simple question. What is the first sound in the word ship? You answer S because that is the first letter. You are told the answer is sh. You feel a brief, hot embarrassment that surprises you because you've been speaking English your whole life and reading English for most of it, and yet you have just been quietly told that you do not know what is inside one of the most ordinary words in the language. You are not being insulted. You are being shown something true. The thing you were never taught is that letters are not sounds, and sounds are not letters. And the word ship is built out of 3 sounds, IP, only one of which uses a single letter. That moment in a child or in an adult is not a moral failing. It is a missing skill. The skill has a name. The skill is phonemic awareness, the ability to hear and work with the individual sounds inside spoken words, separate from the letters that represent them. And it is the foundation almost every other reading skill rests on. This book is about that skill. It is the first volume of the Reading Helix, the literacy curriculum of Global Sovereign University. It is for anyone, parent, teacher, homeschooler, adult learner, or person who has struggled with reading for years and is tired of being told the problem is willpower, who wants to know what is actually broken when reading is broken and how to fix it without shame. You should know who this book is for, because 3 readers will see themselves in it. The first is the parent or teacher who has watched a bright, eager child memorize whole books, recite them with expression, and then collapse the moment the same words appear in a new arrangement on a different page. The child knows the story. The child loves the story. The child cannot read the story. The well-meaning advice has not worked. Pointing at the picture has not worked. Asking the child to guess from context has made it worse. This book explains what is actually missing in plain language, and it gives you a path forward that does not depend on a specialist, a program, or a budget. The second is the homeschool family that has chosen to take responsibility for reading instruction directly. You did not become a phonics scholar overnight. You were never trained as a reading specialist. You have heard the term, the science of reading, and you have read enough to know that the program at the local school did not align with it, but you do not yet know what to do differently at your kitchen table tomorrow morning. This book gives you a complete curriculum, preschool through early elementary, that respects your time, your child's dignity, and the science. The third reader is the adult who reads well enough to survive, but knows privately that something is missing. You may avoid reading aloud. You may freeze on unfamiliar words. You may have spent decades guessing from shape, length, and the first letter, leaning on memory and intelligence to fill in what the print should have given you directly. This book does not assume you are not bright. It does not start over from the alphabet. It identifies the specific layer that is fragile, the layer of sounds beneath the letters, and gives you a self-directed practice you can do quietly, on your own, with no audience and no shame. This book is built on a body of research that has, over the last 30 years, settled what was once genuinely contested. Reading is not natural the way speaking is natural. The brain does not learn to read on its own, and almost every fluent reader passes through a stage of being able to hear sounds inside spoken words before, not after, they learn to map those sounds onto print. That research came from cognitive psychologists, reading scientists, linguists, and brain imaging. It is most often grouped under the umbrella of the science of reading. It is not a single book or a single author. It is a convergence. The National Reading Panel named Phonemic Awareness one of the 5 essential components of skilled reading. Brain imaging work by Stanislas Dehaene and others showed where in the brain phonemes are actually processed and what happens when that processing fails to develop. Decades of classroom research showed that programs grounded in this science outperform the predict and guess approaches that dominated American reading instruction for a generation. One of the most humane consequences of this research is what it removes. It removes the idea that struggling readers are lazy. It removes the idea that they will catch up if you just read to them more. It removes the idea that good readers are good because they were better children. It replaces all of that with something simpler and more dignified, a sequence of skills, learnable by anyone, that builds reading from the inside out. This book carries that dignity forward in tone, structure, and method. The book is 12 chapters. It opens with the moment of discovery, the small, almost invisible instant when a learner first realizes that the word cat is not one sound but three. It explains how the brain actually handles phonemes, why the skill is invisible, even to people who already have it, and how rhyming and alliteration serve as early doorways for children. Then it climbs through the actual skills in the order the research supports: syllable awareness, then phoneme isolation, then blending and segmentation, and then the most difficult skill of all, manipulation. The ability to take a phoneme out of a word, swap it for a different one, and reassemble the word in the mind. Manipulation is the mental motion that decoding depends on. Most readers who struggle with print struggle here, not at the alphabet. The book teaches it explicitly. Then it does something most reading books refuse to do. It tells the truth about the limits, where phonemic awareness cannot, by itself, make a reader, where the research is genuinely contested and where the contest is mostly settled, where well-meaning instruction quietly fails, and why. That chapter has some honest anger in it, and it earns it, because an enormous number of children have been failed by adults who were trained in methods the science had already discredited. Naming that honestly is not cruelty. It is the beginning of accountability. The final chapters are practical. One chapter is a self-directed practice protocol for adult learners: baseline recordings, an error log, a 2-question check, exactly what to do and what not to do. One chapter is a complete curriculum for teaching children, sequenced across an entire school year, in small daily routines a busy parent or teacher can actually sustain. And the closing chapter is the bridge, because phonemic awareness alone is not reading. Once the sounds are stable, the letters come next, and Volume 2 of the Reading Helix, the code that unlocks reading, picks up exactly where this book leaves off. A word about how to read this. You do not need a strong reading background to read this book. You do not need to have read anything else about the science of reading. You especially do not need to feel embarrassed by what you do not yet know. The central promise is gentle and true. The sounds inside the words are already in your speech, doing real work, audible to you in some moments and not yet in others. With the right kind of practice, small, daily, low stakes in real contexts, the sounds become stable, the letters begin to behave, and the door that was stuck quietly opens. If you find a chapter hard, Gino, the free AI tutor at Global Sovereign University, is available 24 hours a day in 32 languages to read any chapter with you. Model a sound you cannot quite hear, or build practice prompts from your own life. If you would rather work with a person, the Sovereign Handshake at globalsovereignuniversity.org will match you with a mentor from the Civilization Builders program. Free. The aim of this book is not to make you an expert in linguistics. The aim is to give you, or the learner in your care, the one skill that almost every reading life rests on: the skill of hearing what was always there. Chapter 1. The moment words become sounds. Subchapter 1. From whole words to building blocks, the discovery. Most of us begin life believing that a word is a single thing. A word is what you want. A word is what you point to. A word is what you cry when you are hungry and what you say when you are proud. A word is a whole object in the air, delivered in one piece. Adults encourage this. We say mama. We say, can you say cookie? We cheer when the child repeats the entire sound pattern back to us. We do not, in ordinary life, lean in and say, that word you just said is actually made of smaller sounds. And then, for many children, a small cognitive door opens. Not because someone shows them a letter, not because someone hands them a book, but because the brain does what brains do. It organizes experience into patterns, and then it discovers patterns inside the patterns. A child may be 3, 4, or 5, or they may be older. Some children arrive at this discovery early and almost effortlessly. Others do not arrive at it without patient instruction. Adult learners, too, sometimes realize with a shock that they have been using spoken language all their lives without ever being asked to listen to its inner structure. The discovery is not about intelligence. It is not about willpower. It is about noticing something that is real but hidden in plain sight. Imagine a child who knows the word cat. To that child, a cat is a single unit. It means the animal that purrs and rubs your legs and sometimes scratches. If you say cat quickly, the word feels like one sound. It begins and ends so fast that it might as well be indivisible. Even many adults experience it that way, not because the word is truly indivisible, but because our minds have learned to treat it as a finished product. Once reading and language become automatic, we stop paying attention to the parts. Now imagine an adult playing a simple oral game, the kind that sounds like a party trick until you understand what it is really doing. The adult says, "Listen, cat. I'm going to say it slowly. C-C-C-A-A-T. What sounds do you hear?" At first, the child may repeat the whole word. Cat. No, the adult says gently, not the word, the sounds inside it. First sound? The child tries again. There is a pause. Sometimes the pause is a blank. Sometimes it is a guess. Sometimes it is frustration. That pause is not laziness. It is the feeling of reaching for a mental handle that has not been installed yet. If the child has never been asked to separate speech into smaller parts, there is no reason they would know how. But then the adult gives a hint. My mouth does this at the beginning. S. The adult exaggerates the first sound without adding extra vowels. Not ku, just si. The adult may even hold a hand to their throat or show how the tongue touches the back of the mouth. The child watches. The child listens. The child tries to imitate. Si, the child says. Yes, that's the first sound. Now the last sound. Cat ends with T, T. And in the middle, A. So cat is 3 sounds, C-A-T. And in a moment that looks small from the outside, something large happens inside the learner. The word that used to be a single object is now a structure. It has components. It can be taken apart and put back together. It can be changed. This is the beginning of phonemic awareness, the ability to hear and work with the individual phonemes in spoken words. The term phoneme simply means the smallest sound unit that can change meaning in a language. Change one phoneme and you can change the word. Change ka in cat and you get bat. Change a in cat, I, and you get kit. These are not letter facts, they are sound facts. A person can do all of this with their eyes closed. That is why the first step in reading has nothing to do with letters. Reading is the act of mapping symbols onto sounds and then blending those sounds into words with meaning. But before a learner can map letters to sounds, they must be able to perceive the sounds as separate units in the first place. If the spoken word is experienced as one undivided chunk, there is nothing stable to map. The learner may memorize whole written words the way they memorize logos or traffic signs, but the moment the text changes, the strategy collapses. They are left with guessing. They are left with "I've seen this before" as their only anchor. For a child, the discovery can appear as play. It often starts with noticing patterns at the ends of words, rhymes. Cat, hat, bat. The child laughs because the words match. But what they are really noticing is that the ending sound pattern is the same while the beginning changes. That is not yet full phonemic awareness, but it is a crucial stepping stone. Another common doorway is alliteration. Silly snakes slither. The child enjoys the repetition. Again, they are noticing that words can share parts. For an adult learner, the discovery can feel different. Many adult learners can hear rhyme and alliteration easily because those are global sound patterns that remain visible even when individual phonemes are not. The shock comes when someone asks, "What is the first sound in ship?" And the adult answers, S, because that is the first letter, only to learn that the word begins with the sound sh. Or when they are asked how many sounds are in box, and they say 3, because there are 3 letters, only to learn that the word has 4 sounds. B, O, K, S. Adult learners often realize, perhaps for the first time, that they have been carrying letter knowledge like a substitute for sound knowledge. They have survived by leaning on spelling, even when the task is purely oral. This is why phonemic awareness instruction needs to be explicit. We cannot assume the discovery will happen on its own. Some learners do stumble into it through language-rich play, nursery rhymes, or the natural pattern finding of development. Others do not. And when it does not happen, the learner may still be bright, verbal, curious, and eager. They may have an excellent memory. They may have strong comprehension when someone reads aloud to them. But the foundation for decoding will be fragile. The discovery also explains a mystery that frustrates many parents and teachers. Why can a child memorize dozens of books, recite them with expression, and still not read new sentences on the page? Why can an adult recognize familiar words but freeze when faced with an unfamiliar one? The answer is often not motivation and not a lack of exposure to print. The answer is that the learner has not yet gained conscious control of the sound structure of speech. Without that control, written language remains a set of shapes to be recognized, not a code to be used. There's another detail that matters here. The discovery is not just that words can be broken into parts, but that those parts can be manipulated in the mind. A learner who can identify the first sound in cat has begun the journey. A learner who can delete the from cat and say at, or swap the cut for hut and say hat, has gained a more powerful kind of control. This is not a party trick. It is the mental motion that decoding requires. When readers decode, they hold a sequence of sounds in working memory and blend them rapidly, adjusting as new information comes in. The mind must be able to handle phonemes as units, not just as a blur. If you are teaching a child, it helps to watch for the moment they cross from whole word hearing into building block hearing. It might look like a sudden grin when they realize cat and cap are almost the same. It might look like them correcting you. No, you said it wrong. It starts with It might look like them pausing, thinking hard, and then answering accurately in a sound game that would have been impossible a week earlier. If you are an adult learner, it might feel like relief. Many adults have carried the private belief that reading is something they are simply not made for. The discovery that speech has parts can shift that belief. It reframes reading as a learnable skill built from trainable subskills. Instead of, I can't, the inner narrative becomes, I was never taught to hear this. That is not an excuse. It is an explanation, and explanations create a path forward. In the pages ahead, we are going to name these building blocks clearly and practice them deliberately. But first, hold on to this. The sounds were always there. The word cat always contained k, t. The learner did not invent those parts. They learned to perceive them. And that perception, once it clicks, changes everything that comes next. Subchapter 2, Phonemes versus Letters, Understanding the Difference. Once you have felt that door open, once a cat stops being one sound and becomes three, it is natural to reach for the tool you already know, letters. Many learners do it automatically. Children do it because they have been surrounded by alphabet songs and refrigerator magnets. Adults do it because letters are visible, dependable, and familiar. Letters sit still on the page. Sounds do not. Sounds vanish the moment they are spoken. So when we say, phonemic awareness has nothing to do with letters, we do not mean that letters are unimportant. We mean something more precise. Phonemic awareness is a listening skill, not a print skill. It lives in the mouth and the ear and the mind, not on the page. This difference matters because phonemes and letters are not the same thing, and English is the kind of language that will punish you if you pretend they are. A phoneme is the smallest unit of sound that can change meaning. If you switch one phoneme, you can make a different word. Cat and bat differ by one phoneme at the beginning. Cat and cap differ by one phoneme at the end. Those changes are real even if you never write the words down. A letter is a symbol in an alphabet. Letters belong to spelling. They are marks we use to represent sounds, but they are not the sounds themselves. That distinction seems obvious until you try to teach or learn reading. When the adult in the earlier scene asked, "What sounds do you hear?" the child's first attempt was to repeat the whole word, cat. That is a normal response because the child is thinking in meanings and whole words, not sound units. But a second kind of confusion often appears as soon as learners become aware that words have parts. They begin to answer sound questions with letter answers. Ask a learner, "What is the first sound in ship?" And many will say S. They are not being careless. They are doing something reasonable. They are reaching for the representation they have been taught. In print, ship starts with the letter S, but in sound, ship begins with sh, a single phoneme. The mouth does one action, not two. If you stretch the beginning of ship slowly, you do not get s followed by h. You get one continuous sound, sh. Ask, "How many sounds are in box?" And many will say 3 because there are 3 letters. But in sound, box is box. The X at the end is not one phoneme, it is 2 phonemes packed into one letter. Spelling has a shortcut, speech does not. These are not trick questions. They are the exact places where reading breaks when the sound system and the letter system are treated as if they match perfectly. The simplest way to keep the two categories clear is to notice what your eyes are doing. If you have to look at the word, you are probably thinking about letters. If you can do it with your eyes closed, you are thinking about phonemes. That is why phonemic awareness activities are traditionally oral. They are designed to keep the brain from grabbing the crutch of print before the sound skill is stable. This is also why phonemes are often written between slashes, like or sh. The slashes are a reminder. We are naming sounds, not letters. The letter M is a symbol. The phoneme is the humming sound you make when your lips are closed and your voice is on. One belongs to an alphabet, the other belongs to your vocal cords. For many adult learners, this is where a quiet piece of shame lives. They have been asked sound questions in school, answered with letters, been told they are wrong, and concluded, "I'm bad at reading." But what they were missing was not effort. They were missing the concept itself. No one said plainly, there are sounds and there are letters, and they do not line up neatly in English. For children, the confusion is even more understandable because we often teach the alphabet as if it were a set of sounds. We say B says B, we say C says ku. But the names of letters are not the sounds, and the B and ku versions are not quite the sounds either. They include an extra little vowel that sneaks in because it is hard to pronounce a stop consonant by itself. If you say B cleanly, you cannot hold it the way you can hold or s. It is a quick burst. Teachers and parents often add a vowel without meaning to. That can make blending harder later because the learner tries to blend b-a-tu instead of t. This does not mean you should never teach letter names. Letter names are useful. They help with spelling aloud, with dictionary use, with classroom instructions. But letter names are not the same thing as phonemes, and letter sounds are only approximations unless they are taught carefully. The deeper issue is that English uses 26 letters to represent around 44 phonemes. That means the mapping cannot be one-to-one. It must be many-to-one, one-to-many, and sometimes many-to-many. Sometimes one phoneme is spelled with one letter, like in map. Sometimes one phoneme is spelled with 2 letters, like sh in ship or ch in chop. Sometimes one letter represents more than one sound, like X in box or C in cat versus C in city. Sometimes a letter represents no sound at all, like the K in knee. And sometimes the same sound can be spelled in multiple ways, like f in fun, phone, and laugh. If you are already a fluent reader, you know all of this in the way you know how to balance while walking. You do it without thinking. That is precisely why it is hard to explain. The skill has become invisible. You look at a ship, and you do not experience yourself choosing. You simply hear ship in your mind, as if the letters were transparent. But a learner does not have that automatic pathway yet. For them, the letters are not transparent, they are loud. So here's the clean separation to hold on to. Phonemic awareness asks what sounds are in the spoken word. It is sound-to-sound work. Phonics asks which letters represent those sounds. It is sound-to-letter and letter-to-sound work. Both are essential, but they are not the same, and teaching one while assuming the other is already in place is a common way instruction fails. You can see the separation in the earlier cat game. The adult did not point to CAT. The adult stretched the spoken word CCT and asked the child to notice what their ear and mouth were doing. That is phonemic awareness. If the child later learns that the sound k at the beginning of cat is spelled with the letter C in this word, that is phonics. And because English is inconsistent, the separation protects learners from confusion. A learner with strong phonemic awareness can handle spelling surprises more calmly. If they can clearly hear at the beginning of cat, they have something stable. Then they can learn. Sometimes k is spelled C, sometimes K, sometimes CK. The sound stays the same even when the spelling changes. Without that stable sound, the learner's world is a blur of visual forms. They may memorize cat as a shape. They may memorize catch and kitchen and kite as separate shapes. But they will not see the common k thread that connects them because the letters do not make it obvious, and no one has trained their attention to listen for it. This is why people who guess at words often look like they are using meaning and first letters as their only anchors. They see a word that starts with C, they look at the picture, and they guess cat when the word is actually car. They are not hearing the difference in their mind as they read because the sound structure is not under conscious control. Phonemic awareness does not magically solve that, but it gives the mind the units it needs to be precise. There is one more subtle point. A phoneme is not the same as a syllable. The word cat is 1 syllable and 3 phonemes. The word paper is 2 syllables and 4 phonemes. P, p, Learners often begin by hearing syllables because syllables are louder, more physical. You can clap them, you can feel the jaw drop. Phonemes are smaller. They require finer attention. That is why rhymes and syllables are stepping stones and why we do not rush past them. We use the brain's natural ability to notice big sound patterns to train it to notice small ones. If you are teaching, it helps to be very explicit about which game you are playing. Say, we are listening for sounds, not letters. Say, close your eyes, no looking. Say, I'm going to say it slowly. Use your mouth as a teaching tool. If you are an adult learner, give yourself permission to separate the systems in your mind. When you answer a sound question with a letter and get corrected, do not interpret it as failure. Interpret it as a new category forming. That is learning. Letters will come soon enough. In fact, the entire reading journey is about connecting letters to sounds and building automaticity until print becomes speech in the mind. But that future connection is stronger when the sounds are already distinct. The word cat always had 3 phonemes. The letters C-A-T are simply one way English chose to represent them. The more clearly you can hear the sounds before you chase the symbols, the less mysterious reading becomes, and the less often you will be forced to rely on guessing. Subchapter 3. The English Sound System, 44 phonemes, 26 letters. Sound, reading instruction would be simpler than it is. Not easy, because nothing about learning is effortless for everyone, but simpler in the way a well-made map is simpler than a hand-drawn sketch. A learner could point to a letter and say its sound, then slide the sounds together, and the word would appear. Many languages are closer to that kind of system than English is. English is not. English asks learners to do something more complex, to map 26 letters onto roughly 44 phonemes, the smallest sound units that change meaning. That number is not magic, and it is not perfectly identical in every dialect. A speaker in Texas may pronounce some vowels differently than a speaker in Michigan. Some speakers keep certain sounds distinct that others merge. But across mainstream varieties of American English, the sound inventory hovers around that mid-40s range. The exact count matters less than the reality it points to. We have more sounds than letters. So the writing system has to double up, reuse, and improvise. This is where many reading struggles begin, not because the learner is inattentive, but because English is asking for a kind of flexible mapping that no one explains. The child in the cat game from earlier can learn to hear ka, ah, and feel proud of that new control. Then the very next step in print can feel like the floor shifts. Sometimes k is C, sometimes it is K, sometimes it is CK. The learner is not wrong to wonder why. The system is not fully regular, and pretending it is only makes the learner feel at fault. Let's make the mismatch visible. Start with consonants, because they are often easier to feel in the mouth. English has sounds like where you can hum with closed lips. It has s, a neck that you can stretch like a snake. It has stop sounds like p and t that are quick bursts. Many consonant phonemes do have a common one-letter spelling. Is often M, S is often S, and T is often T. That familiarity is one reason adults forget the complexity. We remember the parts that worked and forget the parts that took training. But even consonants refuse to stay neatly inside single letters. Some phonemes are commonly spelled with two letters because English ran out of symbols. The sound in ship is one phoneme, one mouth action, but we write it with S and H together. The k sound in chop is one phoneme, but it is written with C and H. The sound in thin is one phoneme, written with T and H. And then English adds a twist. There are actually two different sounds for many speakers, one in thin and another in this. They feel similar, and the spelling does not help you distinguish them. You have to learn the difference by listening and speaking, and then later by matching it to meaning and spelling patterns. Other consonant phonemes are spelled with three letters in some words, as in the t spelling at the end of catch. The sound is, but English often uses after a short vowel. That is not a sound fact. It is a spelling convention. The learner who can hear clearly is in a better position to learn that convention. The learner who cannot yet isolate k is trying to memorize the entire word as a chunk. Then there are letters that represent multiple sounds depending on the word. The letter C can represent k as in cat or jes as in city. The letter G can represent G as in go or je as in giant. The letter S can represent S as in sip, but also Z as in has. The letter X, as we said, often represents two phonemes, k and s as in box or gz as in exact. None of this is fair in the sense of being purely predictable from one rule a learner can memorize. It is learnable, but it takes time and good instruction. And sometimes a letter represents no phoneme at all. The K in knee is not pronounced. The W in right is not pronounced in most modern English. The B in thumb is silent. Silent letters are not a sign that English is designed to torment children. They are often fossils, leftovers from older pronunciations, or markers that hint at meaning and word family connections. Thumb once had a pronounced B sound in earlier forms. The spelling stayed even after speech changed. The writing system, in that sense, is conservative. It remembers. Now consider vowels, which are where English becomes truly crowded. English has a small handful of vowel letters, A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y. But it has many more vowel phonemes than that. Depending on dialect, English has around 14 to 20 vowel sounds if you count the long vowels, short vowels, and the more complex vowel glides. Even if you avoid technical terms, you can feel the reality. The vowel in cat is not the vowel in cake. The vowel in sit is not the vowel in seat. The vowel in hot is not the vowel in hope. And in many accents, the vowel in book is different from the vowel in boot. These are different phonemes because switching them can change a word's identity. So how does English spell all of those vowel sounds with only 5 main vowel letters? By using combinations, context, and conventions that learners must be taught explicitly. Sometimes one vowel phoneme is spelled with one vowel letter, especially in short words, A in cat, E in bed, I in sit, O in hot, U in sun. That is the pattern many early reading lessons start with. And it is a reasonable beginning because it gives learners a foothold, but it is not the full system. Very quickly, English uses 2 letters to represent one vowel sound. The long S sound can be spelled E as in see, EA as in see, E as in me, Y as in happy, and even I as in chief. The long A sound can be spelled E as in cake, I as in rain, A as in day, and sometimes EA as in break. A learner who is told says A will feel betrayed by the cat. A learner who is told says A will feel betrayed by cake. Both experiences are predictable. The instruction is oversimplified. English also uses silent E as a spelling signal. In many words, a final E is not a phoneme. It is a marker that changes the vowel before it. Compare cap and cape, kit and kite, and not and note. The E is not pronounced, but it changes the vowel sound. Again, that is not phonemic awareness. That is phonics. But phonemic awareness supports it because the learner must be able to hear that cap and cape differ in their vowel phoneme, not merely in their final letter. And then there are vowel sounds that are not cleanly represented by any single letter. The vowel in bird is a good example. It can be spelled ear, and sometimes or, as in word. 4 different spellings for a similar sound. This is exactly the kind of complexity that causes a learner with weak sound control to give up and guess. But a learner with strong phonemic awareness can at least anchor to the sound. I know what I hear. Now I need to learn how English spells it in this word. This is why we keep insisting, even at the risk of sounding repetitive, that the sound system must be stable before the print system can become predictable. English spelling is not purely phonetic. It is a layered system influenced by sound, history, and meaning. It does represent sounds, but not in a one-to-one way, and not always in the same way. Here is the practical implication for teaching and learning. When you teach a learner that cat is ka-a-t, you are giving them control over a real thing, the spoken structure. That control transfers across spelling changes. The k sound is the k sound, whether it is written as C in cat, K in kit, or CK in back. The learner who can hear clearly does not have to be retaught the sound each time. They only have to learn the new spelling pattern. When you teach a learner that ship begins with sh, you are protecting them from the letter trap. If they answer S because they are staring at the page in their mind, you can bring them back to the mouth and ear. Close your eyes, say ship slowly, feel it. Does your mouth do one sound at the start or two? The point is not to scold the letter answer. The point is to re-anchor in sound, because sound is the thing reading is trying to represent. For adult learners, this often becomes a turning point. Many adults have carried a private strategy, memorized spellings as visual shapes and hope for the best. That strategy can work for a while, especially for high-frequency words, but it breaks as vocabulary expands. It breaks in job training, in forms, in textbooks, and in any situation where new words appear. When an adult learns, English has more sounds than letters, and that is why spelling feels inconsistent. Something releases. The struggle becomes explainable, and what can be explained can be systematically practiced. For children, naming the mismatch early prevents a different kind of injury, the slow, accumulating belief that reading is arbitrary and therefore impossible. A child who thinks every word must be memorized is a child who will eventually face a wall. But a child who learns, from the beginning, letters are symbols for sounds, and English sometimes uses more than one letter for one sound, is being told the truth. That truth is not discouraging when it is delivered with calm confidence. It is clarifying. So yes, English has about 44 phonemes and only 26 letters. That mismatch is not a footnote. It is the central design constraint of English literacy. It is the reason phonemic awareness must come first. If the learner can hear the sounds cleanly, the later complexity of spelling becomes a series of learnable patterns rather than an endless set of surprises. The sounds are the stable reality underneath. The letters are the code we use to capture that reality. In the next chapters, we will look closely at how the brain handles this mapping and why, for many fluent readers, the entire process becomes so automatic that it disappears from view. But for now, keep your attention where it belongs at the beginning, in the spoken word, in the parts inside it, in the phonemes that have been there all along, waiting to be noticed. Welcome to Global Sovereign University. Welcome to the most innovative learning environment on Earth. A distinction Global Sovereign University, GSU, proudly stands behind. GSU is a completely free educational platform designed for everyone, whether you are a homeschooled student, a traditional classroom learner seeking advanced tools, or an adult dedicated to lifelong learning. Because every individual learns differently, we have completely eliminated the one-size-fits-all approach. The magic of 6 in the land of the free. For every book we offer, GSU employs a multifaceted learning framework we call the Magic of 6 and the Land of the Free. 1. Video summaries, a concise, narrated visual walkthrough covering the first of the book's 12 chapters. 2. Audio podcasts, full read-aloud audio versions of the initial chapter. 3. Educational games, score-based, repetitive learning games that ensure education feels like play. You can log in 24/7 and pick up exactly where you left off. 4. Free digital books, downloadable digital copies of the complete books to keep at absolutely no cost. 5. Gino the AI Tutor, a dedicated patient artificial intelligence tutor you can converse with at any time of day or night. 6. Comprehension Certification, a free certification program earned by progressing down a learning path we call Trifurcation Road, our global mission. Currently, GSU is available in English, Spanish, and simplified Chinese. Fueled by our Amazon book sales and the generosity of our donors, we are actively working to expand our offerings into 32 languages, ensuring accessible, real world education for anyone, anywhere in the world.